are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. Today is April 13th, 2025, and this is episode 313 of Lighthearted. This week I was planning to do a Lighthearted Light episode with an edited version of an interview from the past. We are going to hear one of those, but we also have two new segments today. In a few minutes, we'll hear an edited version of an interview I did back in November 2019 with John Potvin, who is the manager for Thomas Point Shoal Light for the Chesapeake chapter of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. After that, we'll be listening to an interview I just recorded with Natasha Nash Dixon, who is the author and illustrator of a new children's book called Drew's Grand Adventure, which is related to Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse. But first, we're going to listen to a short segment recapping a virtual conference that was recently held from March 25th to the 27th by the U.S. Lighthouse Society. The conference celebrated the 25th anniversary of the National Historic Lighthouse Preservation Act of 2000, with presenters and attendees sharing their stories of lighthouse stewardship and preservation. Joining me for the discussion were the Society's Vice President, Kathy Fleming, as well as Executive Director Jeff Gales. Before we hear that discussion, I want to mention that the conference was the brainchild of USLHS President Henry Gonzalez. He put a tremendous amount of work into the organizing of the conference, and along with Kathy Fleming, Henry moderated the 3 days of the conference. There were many balls in the air, and they did a great job. So let's listen to the recap of the NHLPA conference now. We're talking today with U.S. Lighthouse Society Vice President Kathy Fleming and Executive Director Jeff Gales. And what we're going to talk about is we're going to do kind of a recap of a virtual conference that just happened a couple of weeks ago. It was March 25th to 27th. So, Kathy, if you maybe want to explain a little bit for people who don't know what this conference was.
Yeah, the conference was, and thank you for having us, Jeremy. We really appreciate it. The conference was in commemoration of the 25th anniversary of a new preservation law, which was an amendment to the 1966 Historic Preservation Act. And it was the National Historic Lighthouse Preservation Act of 2000, and we're commemorating its 25th anniversary. And of course, there's still lighthouses being quote unquote given away, and they, through three federal agencies to nonprofits and other organizations, and some of them ended up going on the market. So and have private owners now and have been restored. And so we were commemorating the successes and looking at the challenges. So we had a host of speakers. It was really fabulous.
Yeah, it certainly seemed fabulous from where I sit. And attendees, I think you had maybe a couple of hundred altogether. People signed up, something like that.
Yeah, we had over 200 signed up. Jeff, you may know more about that than I do. I don't know. And then during the mornings, we seemed to have about 83 people there at any one time. So people came and went throughout the day. Sure. 3 days worth of programming.
I think all three of us have been to a lot of Lighthouse conferences over the years, although there haven't been as many in recent years as there used to be, going back to even the 90s and early 2000s when I first really got involved. But this is a good way to do a conference for obvious reasons, because people from all over can attend and also people from all over can present.
Yeah, the way we set it up was it started a little bit later in the day on the East Coast so that folks on the West Coast could join us. We really had a number of speakers from all over, like, for example, the Essex Heritage Area from Baker's Island Lighthouse, Annie Harris and
Salem, Mass.
We were there. Yeah. I was very impressed by the presentation by Fairport Harbor West Lighthouse, when one of the private owners, Sheila Consol, and all the things she had to go through, but then there were also those that were from the West Coast that were there too. So it was a really, really good mix, I think, of different areas of the country.
I was really happy to put faces with names from people that are so heavily involved in what we do for like National Park Service and the U.S. Coast Guard and all the people who took part in the conference to kind of explain their roles and their processes. It was nice to be able to actually meet those people and get to know them a little bit better.
Absolutely. And don't forget the General Services Administration. They were really, they're the real estate agents for all of this and help everybody do it. So we had some great speakers from each individual agency, and they really helped put it together too.
For lighthouse managers or lighthouse owners that are going through this process, even post-process, these people are great resources.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the things that I was impressed with in the conference is that how people were asking each other really good questions about resources, particularly in the area of lenses. I think we could probably do a conference just on that, and how much need there is for people to understand who can take care of them and how that works. And I know there's something coming up in September at the Maritime Heritage Conference, but there were a lot of things like that where people really need to find the resources to help them care for their light and keep the light shining.
I also like the fact that we saw a bump in people wanting to participate in the Society's Lighthouse Manager group, which is kind of an extension of our NHLPA conference. And the more people we can get to participate in the LMAG, the more of a conversation we can have on a regular basis.
Absolutely. We have another meeting of the LMAG coming up on the 23rd of April, and it's the Lighthouse Managers Advisory Group. Right?
Yeah.
Lighthouse Managers Advisory Group. Let me say that right. And yeah, that's part of it. Has sort of the same purpose, getting people together to share resources and learn and discuss and share. Sometimes you just need to share your challenges with each other and kind of commiserate.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you mentioned the LMAG, the Lighthouse Managers Advisory Group. And if people are listening, obviously there's a lot of people in the lighthouse world who listen to this who might be interested in that, who might not know about it. Whom should they contact to find out more about the LMAG?
Well, they could certainly contact the U.S. Lighthouse Society and reach out to Jeff, or they can reach out to me directly.
Sounds good, yeah. So I imagine there's probably already discussion going on for maybe future conferences.
We haven't really gotten into any of the discussion about what might be or the topics, but we have talked about it, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So here again, if you want to join as a member of the U.S. Lighthouse Society, then be sure to be on the mailing list for the future programming. But I wanted also, Jeremy, to just thank our sponsors. International Chimney, or ICC Commonwealth as they're known now, was a major sponsor of this event, and MSI Marine Solutions also sponsored it. And without them, we really couldn't have done this and made it all possible. We also have recordings, I think, don't we, Jeff? How do people, if they miss the conference and they'd like to get involved in it, how do they do that?
They just contact me directly, and I'll send them a link that they can use to access that information.
Another interesting aspect, I think very successful aspect, was the so-called breakout rooms where people got to discuss specific subjects that weren't on the agenda, were kind of picked on the fly. From what I saw, I took part in a couple, and they seemed quite lively and successful. So that was great too.
That was really fun to see everybody and meet some people. With that, I thought that was great. The last day, we ended up having regional kind of get-togethers and talking to people who are closer to us. So I was in the Southeast one, of course, and I met a number of new people. It was almost like the changing of the guard a little bit, as some of us who've been in this industry, I guess you call it, for a long time and preserving lighthouses are meeting new people coming in and just catching on fire for them. So it was really fun.
Before we close this discussion, I know that my good friend, who I've known for over 20 years now, Bob Trapani Jr., Executive Director of the American Lighthouse Foundation, was, I think, the first presenter in the conference. And Kathy, I think you have something you might want to say or read that has to do with that?
Yes, I just wanted to share just a couple of sentences from one of his slides, because I think it really is inspirational, like Bob is and has been for years and years, but it also just shows you the spirit of the conference itself and what lighthouse people think. And so this is what it is. He wrote, "Come and ascend to a lofty place where the light burns ever bright. You will not undertake your journey alone, for history and all those who helped forge it will hold your hand. True, only veiled shadows of what was will be seen, but most assuredly you will feel the presence of the keepers and their families. Your footsteps will be in lockstep with bygone wikis, echoing as you climb and carrying you back to another place and time."
Yeah, that's really nice. And you read it like a poem, which it is.
Yeah, it is a poem, and it's just fabulous. And there were a couple of inspirational moments in this conference like that, in addition to the great people from the GSA and National Park Service and Coast Guard.
Yeah. Well, the work all these people do is inspirational in itself.
Yep.
So, Kathy and Jeff, thank you for doing this recap of the conference today. And in the not too distant future, hopefully we'll be talking about another conference coming up. But give ourselves a little time maybe to rest from that one. So, Kathy and Jeff, thanks so much.
Thanks
you.
Next, we'll hear an abridged version of an interview I recorded back in November 2019. Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse, which was built in 1875, is the last surviving cottage-style screwpile lighthouse in the country. The city of Annapolis owns the lighthouse and leases it to the Chesapeake chapter of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. The Annapolis Maritime Museum serves as the departure point for tours. John Potvin is a volunteer for the Chesapeake chapter of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. He has been the manager of Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse for several years. Last year, John was honored by the Maryland Historical Trust for outstanding individual leadership at the local level. This honor recognized John's years of work preserving the historic lighthouse, conducting tours, and training volunteers. On a personal note, I visited Maryland about a year ago, and John Potvin took me out to Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse at sunset and gave me a tour. He could not have been more generous with his time, and it was an evening I'll never forget. It's one of the best restorations I've seen. So let's listen to my conversation with John Potvin now. John, if we could start by talking a little bit about what's been accomplished so far.
Yes, Jeremy, we've gotten a lot accomplished. We have the cottage itself about 95% restored at this point. We have a couple of little details still get worked out, but we've replaced most of the exterior siding on the lighthouse. We've put a new equipment room ceiling and walls in the past year. We've abated lead paint in the ceiling and walls in the parlor. The second floor has been refinished, floors and walls, and we have painted throughout. We've furnished the lighthouse with period antiques, and we have potbelly stoves out there, very similar to what was originally at the lighthouse from 1875. For all intents and purposes, is a showpiece or museum piece now, and it's very exciting for me because we've had 15 years of volunteer effort and volunteer materials that have brought this lighthouse back to life. Most of the work out there has been done by volunteers, and it's been done with volunteer labor. In fact, we won a national competition for new windows from Genweld, and we have new doors and windows at the lighthouse as a result of that.
So let me ask you a question. Why is it important that Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse be preserved in its original location in Chesapeake Bay? Why not move it to shore like some of the other similar screwpile lighthouses that have been relocated to museums in the area? There are a few that have actually been relocated to shore. Why keep it where it is in the bay?
Well, let me first say that there used to be 40 screwpile lighthouses on the bay.
Right.
So we're down to one, and that is the Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse. So its historical significance is, I just can't stress how important it is to keep that lighthouse in its current position, still using it for navigational purposes. There are 3 other screwpile lighthouses that have been disassembled and moved into museums. But this is our opportunity to have a museum in its original location. It's our opportunity to pass on to our children what it was like in the long, distant past to be out on a lighthouse and to see what it's like to live on a lighthouse. So I think it's extremely important. It's an icon of the bay. Everybody that boats on the Chesapeake Bay knows this lighthouse. And for many, it's a sign that they're home. When they're coming up or going down the bay, when they get to the Thomas Point Lighthouse, they know they're home.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle facing Thomas Point Lighthouse in its future preservation?
I think like everything else, we always are looking for volunteers. The biggest obstacle we have is people do this for a period of time and then they kind of burn out and go on to do something else. So I think that our vitality with this lighthouse is to keep an active list of volunteers that are willing to go out and spend their blood, sweat, and time to keep this iconic lighthouse on the bay.
There are tours to the lighthouse, seasonal tours, and you are, I believe, in addition to your role as the preservation foreman and your role in fundraising for the lighthouse, you're also a docent and somewhat involved in the tours as well. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how the tours work?
I can. They're actually run through the United States Lighthouse Society. The best way to get onto the tour is to go onto their website, which is USLHS.org. And there's an area where you can click on for tours to the Thomas Point Lighthouse. The lighthouse tours are conducted through the Annapolis Maritime Museum. So they have a dock and a landing, and we have a boat that will pick up to 18 passengers at a time from the Annapolis Maritime Museum and take them out to the lighthouse. The tours are done in the summertime on Saturdays. We do 2 tours per day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And we call them adventure tours because they're not for faint of heart. It takes about a half an hour to get out to the lighthouse on the boat called the Sharps Island. And once you're at the lighthouse, they have to climb a set of steps to get up to the cottage. And once they're in the cottage, they have to go through a spiral staircase and work their way up to the second deck and then to the lantern level. So it is an adventure tour. It's a fascinating tour. And people that go out there come back home with a smile on their face. I've never seen anybody disappointed in the tours. So it's very exciting. Every tour has 2 docents who are trained, as well as a communications expert and a supervisor at the lighthouse. And then we have volunteers ashore. So at any given point, you may have a different docent than you had the last time you're out. So it would be interesting, frankly, to take the tour more than once because you learn something on every tour. Personally, I took the docent training because I was out there working so much. People were always asking me questions. I thought, I need to know more about this lighthouse if I'm going to take people through here.
Right.
So that's why I went through the docent training, and I have great admiration from the docents. I can tell you every single one of them is fantastic, and I really enjoy seeing people's faces light up when they go in and see this restored cottage in the middle of the bay at Thomas Point Lighthouse.
Do the volunteers do other work at the lighthouse as well, like cleaning, basic maintenance, that sort of thing?
We do have some double dippers. We call them double dippers because they're both preservationists and docents. But they generally don't cross over. But there are very few people that will actually do the volunteering and docent work as well as the preservation work that has to go on at the lighthouse.
But there are volunteers who do preservation work.
Yes, we have 22 to 23 volunteers that come out and do preservation work on the 3rd Saturday of the month throughout the summer. As I mentioned early on, I think one of our biggest challenges going forward in the long term is to keep people motivated and volunteering and going out to help the preservation activity. And they can do that in a number of different ways. They can go to the Chesapeake chapter of the U.S. Lighthouse Society and send an email on to any of the people on the list. They can also go directly to the United States Lighthouse Society in their comment section, say, I'd like to volunteer for work at the Thomas Point Lighthouse, or they can send me an email. It's jpotvin48@gmail.com. It's jpotvin48@gmail.com. And I'll put them on the list, and they'll get an email from our coordinator who will send them an invitation when we're doing work out there.
Here's a question for you for some bonus points. What's your personal favorite thing about the work you do for Thomas Point Lighthouse?
I think that I get so much satisfaction in seeing the restoration come to fruition and seeing the finished product and seeing people's faces light up. But more than that, I am just humbled by the scores of volunteers that have been there before me that have brought this lighthouse to the condition that it's in today. It is just such an experience to see this lighthouse.
And actually, I do have one other question for you. How did you get into this in the first place? How did you get involved with the lighthouse?
Well, Jeremy, I retired 4 years ago from a career in property management, and my wife said, you can't just sit around the house. That won't work here. So I saw an ad in the newspaper for a volunteer for the lighthouse, and I thought, well, I can paint. I can go out and do that. So I got out there, and I started slapping some paint on the walls out there, and the comment was made, well, at least you know which part of the brush to hold. So I actually started doing minor carpentry out there, and then Hobie Statzer, one of the stalwart volunteers, has worked and was the preservation foreman before me, said, well, you seem to know an awful lot about this lighthouse, and I'm getting ready to retire from my position here. Would you consider taking it on? So I jumped in with both feet, and I've been doing it now for about 2 years.
Well, that's great. I think it's obviously been a labor of love for you, and they're lucky to have you as a volunteer. So it's worked out great for everybody. And I really appreciate you spending this time with us today. And I congratulate you and everybody with the Chesapeake chapter, all the people who are involved with the Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse. So again, thank you so much, John Potvin, for spending some time with me today. I very much appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Any lighthouse buff visiting the Chesapeake region needs to take a tour to Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. To find out more, go to the Society's website at uslhs.org and look under Other Tours and Cruises. You'll find information about the tours and how you can make a reservation. You need to reserve early because the tours sell out. In fact, I just checked, and 8 of the first 10 tours this year are already booked, and I'm talking on April 10th. But there are still plenty of tours available from June to October. Now we're going to hear a conversation I recorded a few days ago with Natasha Nash Dixon. Natasha is a Maryland native and self-taught artist whose work is sold in art galleries and gift shops. Natasha's favorite subjects for her art are animals and nature, and also nautical themes. She's also a volunteer for Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse. Natasha's new children's book, Drew's Grand Adventure, is based on a true story related to Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse. The book also includes the photography of David Seitz, who is an acclaimed Maryland photographer. I don't want to give too much away. You'll hear a lot more about the book in our conversation. All the proceeds from sales of the book are going directly to the lighthouse for its continued preservation. So let's listen to my conversation with Natasha Nash Dixon now. I am speaking this afternoon with Natasha Nash Dixon, who I believe lives in Maryland.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And Natasha is the author of and illustrator, I believe, as well, right? Author and illustrator of a new children's book called Drew's Grand Adventure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this today, Natasha.
Thank you for having me. I was excited to do it.
Oh, you're extremely welcome. So this is just great. I just found out about this pretty recently. John Potvin, who is the manager for the Lighthouse for the Chesapeake chapter of the U.S. Lighthouse Society, sent out a message to a bunch of us. And just to let you know, I visited the Lighthouse for the first time. I'm up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, by the way, and I visited Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse for the first time ever just about exactly a year ago. Actually, I think it was May of last year, and John Potvin took me out at sunset. It was an amazing experience.
Oh, beautiful.
And I got to meet Drew in person. We'll get to that in a minute. But let me ask you something. I was looking for information, and I saw online that you wrote an earlier children's book. It has something to do with a chipmunk. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I wrote a children's book. It was my very first one, titled Alfred the Angry Chipmunk.
Okay.
And it was inspired by a trip to Deep Creek Lake in Maryland. And we stayed at a cabin. And the owners of the cabin, they like to feed the wildlife. So they have deer corn and all kinds of, nuts and things for the squirrels and the deer. And they do attract bears as well as a result. But we had put some food out the one day, and we sat watching all the animals come in, and there was this little chipmunk, and he was just grabbing everything he could. And I kind of leaned out to take a picture of him, and he looked up at me, and I got the picture, and in the picture, he looked just angry. Like, why are you bothering me? I'm trying to eat. Yeah. And so I was thinking about it, and I came up with the story for Alfred. And in the story, Alfred tries to basically hog all of the food that he can get. He does not want to share with anyone else. Yeah. And he chases the other animals away. And in the end, he learns that sharing is always the best thing. And everyone in all the animals in the forest then love Alfred. So
That's
that
a
was a
great
fun
message.
one to do.
Yeah. I imagine he was trying to get everything. He was stuffing it all in his cheek pouches, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I have the actual picture of Alfred in the back of the book.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah.
the real Alfred is in there. But
Uh-huh.
that's where it started. And that's been, gosh, that's probably been 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, until Drew, I was trying to come up with other ideas for children's books, but until Drew, nothing really stuck.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Drew came along.
Okay. Well, speaking of that, for people who might not know, who or what is Drew?
So Drew is a coyote decoy, and he's a hunting decoy. And he was placed on the lighthouse. They have, as you can imagine, a lighthouse in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. You have issues with water, moisture, wind, but one of the larger issues as well are seagulls, birds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what do seagulls do? They make everything white.
Yeah.
And so, taking tours out to the lighthouse, the last thing you want is for guests to step out on a dock that is just covered in,
Yep.
seagull poo. So John had a suggestion that he should purchase a coyote decoy and put him out there. And apparently along the Chesapeake Bay, there are other places that use them, which I didn't know until this.
Mm-hmm.
And so John purchased him Amazon. Amazon purchase, you can get them on there.
Yeah.
And he placed him on the dock, and he has proven an effective deterrent. The dock stays pretty clean now, and Drew has worked really well for that purpose.
Yeah. Well, when I went out there last year, I didn't know about Drew in advance, so I was a little surprised as we're getting near the lighthouse. I see something standing there, and at first I'm thinking, oh, there's a dog out there.
Yes.
And as we getting closer, I realized it wasn't moving at all.
Yeah.
So I finally figured out that's not a real living creature, but it's very realistic. He really looks real.
He does look real. I mean, boaters passing by when they first placed him out there, they thought the same thing. They thought there was a dog stranded on the lighthouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they're very lightweight decoys, because I actually purchased one to take to book signings.
Okay.
And so I do have a Drew that I do take to signings, and they're very lightweight. So, Drew has to be secured to the dock so that he doesn't fall off.
Well, it certainly seemed to be doing the job. There were no birds there when I was there, which was the place was super clean. So the story of Drew's Grand Adventure, is it based on a true story?
Yes, it is based on a true story. The story, everything actually happened. So Drew was on the dock, and we had a tropical storm come up the bay last year, Tropical Storm Debbie. And the storm was very bad, and actually the bay was worked up so much that the dock was ripped off of the lighthouse. And Drew, of course, was attached to the dock. So the dock with Drew attached floated 7 miles up the bay. And the Coast Guard actually located the dock the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And John's friend David Seitz, who was a local Chesapeake Bay photographer, and he is the official photographer for the lighthouse.
Yeah.
David Seitz actually went with a friend of his, Mark Finelli, and they sailed out to the dock, towed it in, got Drew off, and David decided to just take Drew home with him and hold on to him until a new dock could be built.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where Drew's real adventure began. So it wasn't so much the surfing up the bay during a tropical storm, which was the start, but his true adventure really began with David.
Yeah. I remember those Facebook posts back when all that happened, and
yes,
people were a little confused. I mean, I remember, I shared at least a couple of those posts on the U.S. Lighthouse Society Facebook page, and people were saying things like, "Oh, thank goodness the dog is safe." They were maybe not reading it that closely, but
yes.
I think some people got a little bit confused by it, but it was what an adventure Drew had, really. It's pretty amazing that he was still attached to the dock when the piece of the dock when they found it. That's absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was lucky that he actually stayed put. So they had him attached pretty well. So it was very lucky that he was still there and that they could at least get most of the dock to tow back in. David was in the middle of 2 years of going out on the bay every single day on his boat. And in the middle of that's when this happened. So then David started taking Drew out on his boat every day. And he did. He posted the pictures on Facebook.
Yeah. So David Seitz, you mentioned a couple of times, is an excellent photographer. And his photos are in your book. Is that correct?
Yes. When I wrote the story, so I had been following those Facebook posts and from the very beginning, and I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing to have this coyote decoy having this adventure around the Chesapeake Bay. And after a while, I started reading the comments from other people, and they loved Drew. He became kind of a local phenomenon. And every day people wanted to know, what was Drew doing? Where is Drew?
Yeah.
And people were asking for things like stuffed animals, calendars, all sorts of things. And I thought to myself, this would be such a great children's book. And I sat down that night, wrote the story, which pretty much wrote itself, honestly, because it is what happened. And I had everything but the ending. I wasn't sure how to end it. And I sent an email to John. And I said, this is just an idea. Maybe we could turn this into a children's book with my story and David's photos, and we'll sell it to benefit the lighthouse. And I was thinking to myself, they're never going to go for it. But to my surprise, John loved the idea, and then David signed up immediately. And David was very gracious with his photos. He gave me pretty much carte blanche for whatever photos I needed for the book. And he put his trust in myself and my husband to take his photos and make sure they were represented in the best way possible. And I think we did that. And that was really important to me too. Since he didn't really know us, I'd seen him from the lighthouse. I had waved to him and he'd waved back, but we hadn't really had a conversation. So we didn't really know each other before this happened.
Well, that's great. It worked out beautifully. So there's also illustrations by you along with his photos. Is that right?
Yes. When we had tested the story out so I tested it out on my boss's children. And then one of my husband's good friends, Owen, had looked over a rough copy of the story with the pictures. And the feedback that I got in both instances was that it needed something more. And Owen had suggested maybe having little vignettes on the story pages. And we thought that was a great idea. So that's when I started working on the illustrations and adding those in. And they pair nicely, I think, with the photos. And they add a little bit more for little kids.
Right. And speaking of drawings, I understand there's also a coloring book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. There is a coloring book, came out last month.
Okay.
Drew's Grand Coloring Book. And it is it's more of an activity book, because there's a maze, there's a word find, there's a draw Drew, follow the numbers to draw Drew. But then on most of the coloring pages, you have to use your imagination. So for instance, there's one where he has a camera and he's taking a photo, and I purposely left the camera lens blank. And the instructions are to draw what Drew was taking a photo of. So it's little things like that to make kids think a little bit and use their imagination, which I think kind of adds to their coloring adventure.
Yeah, well, I love it. So you kind of mentioned this a few minutes ago, but do proceeds from the sales of these books go to help the lighthouse?
Yes, 100% of the proceeds for the main storybook and for the coloring book do go to help the continued preservation of the lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, we've raised just over $2,000, and we're still going.
Excellent.
So my goal is to raise as much as I can through these books.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with it. I mean, it's the only cottage-style screwpile lighthouse in the United States, still in its original location. And it's so beautiful. The restoration there is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I was very, very impressed when I was there last year. So, do you volunteer at the lighthouse?
I do. I started as a preservation volunteer, and I signed up. I was nervous because I didn't know anybody. And that first day, I met everyone and was immediately put at ease. I mean, it's just the nicest people who volunteer.
Yeah.
And so on preservation days, they start in May and they run through October, and it's weather permitting, of course. And it's one day a month, usually a Saturday, sometimes a Friday. And a group of volunteers go out to the lighthouse, and we do everything from cleaning to repairs. There's a local woodworkers guild, and they donate their time to go out and make repairs on the wood structure and everything. And they're very talented, very good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I have cleaned the inside of the lighthouse top to bottom. I've scrubbed the railing outside and done some painting. There's always painting to be done. I've helped with moisture readings, because they do take regular moisture readings of the siding on the outside, because that's, of course, wood. So they have to keep track of that. So there's always something to do out there. And you're working, but if you just look where you are, you're in the middle of the bay. Most days that I've been out have been just gorgeous. There's sailboats everywhere, and it's just nice to be out there, even if you're working.
Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, I was there at sunset last year, and what an experience that was.
It's beautiful.
So gorgeous, yeah.
And I started last year. I went into their docent training program, so I'm in training now to become a tour docent as well. So I'm doubling as a preservation volunteer and a tour docent, and I've been out on a couple tours. I'll continue this year, and then probably later in the summer start speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and maybe Drew will be one of your specialties to tell people about.
Yes, absolutely. I'll have to make sure I say hi to Drew the next time I go out, which I think will be in June. So I'm excited to see him again.
This year is a special year for Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse, isn't it?
150th anniversary. Big year for the lighthouse. There is going to be a 150th anniversary gala held on Saturday, August the 9th at Navy Stadium in Annapolis.
Okay.
They'll announce on the Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse website in June. Tickets are going to go on sale. I'm not sure of the date. But I know tickets go on sale in June, and we're very excited about that. If you have the opportunity and you can come, I highly recommend it. There's going to be quite a few special things going on for the event.
Great. Yeah, I hope some of our listeners can make it there for that.
Yes.
So, of course, that you said August 9th, that's close to National Lighthouse Day, which is August.
Yes.
Kind of tying it into that. So does Drew have his own Facebook page?
Drew has his own Facebook page, Drew Coyote at Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse. And what he does on that page is he helps to promote the book, and he helps to promote the lighthouse as well and preservation. David actually, because he is out on the water now just about every day still, he will send me photos that he takes of the lighthouse and of Drew, and then I can take those photos and share them on Drew's page. But what I also started doing was sharing little bits of history about the lighthouse as well. Because I figured, Drew is basically the mascot now for the lighthouse. He's representing the light.
And it's like an ambassador for the lighthouse.
Yes, he's our ambassador. And so I thought it would be fun if we had just little bits of history along the way. And I try to make the post not too long. And I can't do them as often as I would like to, but those posts have helped me too, as far as brushing up on the history for tour days. So that's helpful for me as well. But I run the page and put the posts up. So that's been a lot of fun.
So how can people get Drew's Grand Adventure and also Drew's Grand Coloring Book? That's the name of the coloring book.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes.
How can people get them?
They can go on Amazon. They are available directly through Amazon. The book is $24.95, and the coloring book is $8.25. And if you live local in Maryland, the book is available at a few local shops. EL and Company in Pasadena has the book, as well as the Artisans Gallery in St. Michael's, the Old Fox Books and Coffee House in Annapolis, and Selkie Books of Rock Hall in Rock Hall, Maryland. She is going to have copies very soon, and I'm hoping to get the coloring book into these locations as well. And part of that was to not only have it on Amazon, but try to get it into these local establishments to help the local businesses as well. But I have relationships with I had relationships with the Artisans Gallery and EL and Company already. And so it was pretty easy to get the book into there. But it's kind of helping locally as well.
That's great. And on Amazon, I saw, is there also a Kindle version available?
There is a Kindle version available as well of the children's book. We don't have it for the coloring book. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but we do have the children's book.
Right. I'm not sure it makes logical sense to have the coloring book as a Kindle.
No.
You want the physical book that kids can color and do the
I know they have things, for Kindle where you can probably color right on there. And I know kids use those more and more now, but I like the
on a
physical
pad.
coloring book. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Physical coloring books are.
Yeah.
I'm old fashioned, but I think they're better.
Yes.
Okay. So I have one final question for you for bonus points. Okay.
Okay.
And that question is, what has been your favorite thing about doing this book, about the whole project?
Gosh, there's so many favorite things about it. I think the ultimate favorite thing is that it's helping the lighthouse. I can volunteer my time, but now I can actually help and give money to the lighthouse. And the fact that this book is able to raise those funds, that's probably been my favorite thing about it. And it's enabled myself and my husband as well to help even more with preserving the lighthouse. That's probably my favorite thing about this project. And I'm so proud. I'm proud of what it's become. We really didn't know how big it was going to become, but we are so proud.
Yeah.
And my other favorite thing is being able to work with David. That was wonderful as well. Yes. Yeah. He's very nice and he was very gracious. So being able to work with him and have this project with him was just great.
Yeah. His work is beautiful.
Yes.
So Natasha Nash Dixon, thank you for doing this today. And on behalf of Lighthouse fans and fans of Thomas Point Shoal Lighthouse everywhere, thank you for doing the book and for donating the proceeds and for volunteering as well. So Drew's an ambassador for the Lighthouse, but you are too. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been great. I love Drew. I never thought when I saw him for the first time, and that was on a preservation day, I never thought this is where we would end up, but this has been just amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Again, you can buy Drew's Grand Adventure and also Drew's Grand Coloring Book on Amazon and at some independent bookstores in Maryland. It was fun talking with Natasha, and I wish her the best with the new book. By the way, she also works as a veterinary office manager, but hopes one day to create full-time. It looks like she's well on her way to that. I'll also mention that she lives in Maryland with her husband, who did the layout for the book, and their beloved Shih Tzu named Noodle. I want to remind everyone to check out USLHS.org to learn about everything the U.S. Lighthouse Society does. You can also find out more about the Chesapeake chapter of the USLHS by visiting cheslights.org. That's CHES lights.org. Please consider a donation or membership in the USLHS and or the Chesapeake chapter. By donating, you are helping to preserve these vital historic monuments for future generations to learn about and enjoy and to be inspired by. Next week, we'll be back with a new episode. Until then, to all our regular listeners and our new ones, thanks so much for listening and keep a good light.